To our next guest, Chris Chocola, my old congressional colleague and fellow Ways and Means Committee member, now the president of the Club for Growth, joining us from Washington, D.C. Chris, welcome back to America's Forum.
Thanks, JD. Thanks for having me on.
Chris, your organization supported several senatorial candidates, obviously the Republican leader being chief among them. As you look at what happened in Kentucky, you grew up and represented neighboring Indiana. What do you think led to the McConnell victory and such a large victory?
Well, I think, the electorate's pretty smart. The electorate has seen the result of liberal policies. They were passed before 2012, but they didn't take effect until after the 2012 election. And now this is the first election that we've actually seen the results and really the growing incompetence of a huge intrusive government. And so I think the electorate's pretty smart. They decided to reject that. They put the Republicans back in the majority. And the question now is, what will the Republicans do with that majority? That's the critical question. It's kind of like the old movie with the candidate and Robert Redford after he won, and in the midst of the celebration, he said, now what do we do? So either the Republicans will, sit in the Senate and they'll pass, good things, but really small ball, like the medical device tax repeal, or they'll march down to the White House and they'll plop a pro-growth tax reform bill on the president's desk and say, what do you want to do with this, Mr. President? I hope it's the latter. I hope they lead in a pro-growth direction. I hope they actually do what they say they're going to do if they were had the privilege of being back in the majority. I hope it's not like when you and I served together that the main goal was a desperate kind of retention of power. We have to keep the majority even though we aren't willing to use the majority to do the things we promised the election people. I hope that it's different this time. I hope they do pro-growth policy that leads to a growing economy and opportunity for more people.
Chris, we know that McConnell has never been a beloved politician, and many voters have actually expressed that he may have gone to Washington and forgot about the people of Kentucky. So do you think it was his stance on the economy that gave him such a big lead?
Well, I think candidates and campaigns many times are, they ride a wave. There's not much they can do to change the direction. I think this was really a national election. It was a wave election that in the Congress, the candidates, latched down and rode it to victory in many cases. The Republicans obviously were seeing great gains in many places. I think the more significant thing is really the governor's races. I think when you see people like Rick Scott in Florida and Rick Snyder in Michigan, John Kasich in Ohio, Sam Brownback in Kansas after passing a pro-growth tax measure that was reportedly not popular. I think these governors have run on a record. The House and the Senate, they ran on not being Democrats and not supporting President Obama. But the governors ran on records of reform in states that is very difficult to get elected, and it's particularly re-elected after providing leadership on reform measures. So I think there's a lot to learn from the leadership of the governors that got re-elected, and I hope the Congress follows their lead on not just trying to keep power, but trying to win a re-election in 2 years based on policy and reforms and doing what they said they would do.
Chris Chocola, we're going to ask you to stay through this break and come back and talk more about pro-growth economic policies and what you see ahead, both in Washington and at state capitals throughout the country. You please stay with us too. Chris Chocola will be back along with us as we continue the conversation right here on America's Forum.